When your best friend calls you sister, you never think she'll be the one to take your place. That line kept echoing in my head the day I saw them, my husband and my best friend, sitting together at a café that neither of them knew I passed every Thursday. He was leaning forward, smiling in that soft way he used to smile at me when we were newlyweds. She had her hand over his, laughing with her head tilted back, like she was auditioning for joy itself. I remember the smell of burnt espresso drifting through the open window of my car as I sat there, frozen, watching the two people I trusted most share something I couldn't name yet, but knew was wrong. My heart didn't break all at once. It cracked quietly, like ice shifting underfoot. I didn't confront them that day. I just drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I left crescent marks in my palms. The house was quiet, too quiet, and the silence pressed against me like a secret begging to be heard. It's strange how you can sense betrayal before you even have proof. You smell it, like something rotting behind a closed door. You feel it in the pauses during dinner, in the way your husband's eyes don't quite meet yours, in the texts your friend forgets to mention. But before that moment, before the cafe, before the lies, I would have sworn on everything I had that both of them loved me. And maybe that's what hurts the most, normal life setup. Before everything fell apart, my life was simple. I wasn't rich or glamorous, but I had peace, or at least I thought I did. I worked as a school administrator at the local primary school. My husband, Daniel, managed a construction company. We'd been married 9 years. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Whose is? But it was steady, predictable. I thought stability meant safety. My best friend, Tasha, was the kind of woman who could light up a room. She had that loud, contagious laugh, the one that made you forgive her lateness and her chaos. We met in college. I was the quiet one. She was the life of every party. Somehow, we balanced each other. When Daniel and I got married, Tasha stood beside me as my maid of honor. She cried harder than my own mother during the vows. Over the years, she became part of our family. She'd come over on Sundays, bringing that terrible boxed wine she loved, and the three of us would sit around the living room talking about everything and nothing. When Daniel got promoted, Tasha was the first to throw him a surprise party. When I lost my father, Daniel and Tasha both held me up, literally. She slept on my couch for a week to make sure I ate. If you had told me then that those same two people would one day destroy the peace I'd built, I would have laughed at you. Our home was small but warm. 2 bedrooms, 1 old leather sofa that squeaked when you sat down too hard, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of cinnamon from my baking. Daniel loved my banana bread. He used to say it was the taste of home. Every weekday followed the same rhythm. Wake up at 6, make coffee, kiss Daniel goodbye. Work until 4, cook dinner while humming along to the radio. Repeat. It wasn't thrilling, but it was ours. I used to believe that love didn't need fireworks to last. It just needed care, consistency, loyalty. Funny, isn't it, how those are always the things people betray first. The first crack in the picture came one Friday night. Daniel came home later than usual, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. Not floral, sweeter, vanilla maybe. I asked, "Rough day?" He nodded, dropped his keys, and went straight to shower. I didn't think much of it then. Men's clothes pick up scents, I told myself. Maybe someone in the office wore that perfume. Maybe I was imagining things. A week later, Tasha mentioned Daniel had helped her fix a leak at her apartment. I laughed and said, "You mean my husband can actually fix something without calling a plumber?" She chuckled, a little too quickly, and changed the subject. Still, I brushed it off, because that's what we do when we love people. We explain away the discomfort. We patch over cracks before anyone can see through them. One Saturday morning, I invited Tasha for breakfast. We sat in the kitchen, pancakes steaming between us, while Daniel mowed the lawn outside. She looked tired, distracted. Her phone buzzed, and when she saw who it was, she smiled. Not the way friends smile. More like someone remembering something private. I didn't say anything, but I noticed her cheeks flushed pink when Daniel walked past the window. I told myself I was imagining it again. I always had an overthinking mind, didn't I? After she left, Daniel came in, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Tasha okay?" he asked casually. "Why wouldn't she be?" I said. He shrugged, "Just seemed off lately." Then he kissed my forehead and went to shower. The kiss felt colder than usual. That night, I couldn't sleep. There's a kind of silence that fills a home when something's wrong. Even the clock sounds louder. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel breathe beside me. His phone buzzed once on the nightstand. He didn't stir. I turned my head. One message glowed on the screen. "Good night, you." No name. Just that. My chest tightened. I didn't move. Didn't touch the phone. I just watched the light fade back to black and told myself, maybe it's from a coworker. Maybe it's nothing. But deep down, I already knew it wasn't nothing. It was the beginning of the end. The next week, Tasha stopped calling as often. Daniel started working late again. And I started baking more, cleaning more, anything to keep from thinking too much. Because when you sense your world shifting, the first instinct isn't to run. It's to hold still and hope it's just your imagination. But it never is. The first real clue came wrapped in kindness, or what looked like it. One evening, Tasha showed up unannounced, holding a bottle of wine and a big grin. "Thought you could use some girl time," she said. Her hair was curled, her makeup perfect. She looked radiant, almost too radiant for a casual Tuesday. We sat on the couch, glasses clinking, the TV murmuring in the background. She talked about work, her new clients, the chaos of single life. But something in her tone was off. She kept glancing toward the door as if expecting someone. Then she said, almost casually, "Daniel mentioned you've been tired lately. You should let him handle more around here." I blinked. "You've been talking to Daniel?" She sipped her wine, eyes flicking down. "Oh, just bumped into him when I was near his office. He was grabbing lunch." My stomach nodded, though I forced a smile. "Since when do you eat near his office?" "Oh, I had a client meeting nearby," she said quickly. Small world, right? The room went quiet. The wine suddenly tasted sour. I changed the subject, but my mind didn't follow. The idea of them bumping into each other, the way she said his name so easily, it gnawed at me all night. A few days later, Daniel's habits shifted again. He started dressing better, crisp shirts, polished shoes. He said he was meeting investors for a new project. He seemed happy, light. I wanted to be supportive, so I packed him lunches, kissed his cheek, told him how proud I was. But something about his cologne, stronger now, clung to him like guilt. And then there were the absences, missed dinners, half-explained messages, late-night showers that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. One night, I tried to tease him about it. "Someone's been smelling expensive," I joked, setting down his plate. He looked up from his phone, startled. "Oh, one of the clients gave me this cologne. You like it?" I nodded, pretending to, though the scent made my chest ache. That was the night I realized I was living beside a stranger. Tasha's calls became shorter, her visits rarer. When she did come, she'd sit cross-legged on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that same distracted smile. She'd ask about Daniel in a way that felt rehearsed. Is he still swamped at work? He must be exhausted with that new project. Once, she even laughed and said, "You're lucky, you know. Men like Daniel don't come around often. Her voice trembled slightly at the end of that sentence, and I caught her avoiding my eyes. "Yeah," I said softly, "I know." But inside my heart whispered, "He's not mine anymore, is he?" I started noticing little details that didn't make sense. Daniel's shirts, ones I hadn't seen in days, smelled faintly of vanilla and coconut oil. Tasha's perfume was vanilla and coconut oil. He began leaving his phone face down on the counter. She began carrying 2 phones, one for work, she said. I began to disappear, quietly, from the center of my own life. One Sunday, I invited a few friends over for lunch, Tasha included. It was my way of testing something, though I didn't admit it to myself. She came in wearing a pale yellow dress that hugged her just enough to make me uneasy. Daniel's eyes flicked up when she entered, just for a second, but I saw it, that small spark of familiarity, of something unspoken. Throughout lunch, their laughter overlapped in rhythm, like people who shared private jokes. I watched her refill his glass before anyone else's. Watched him compliment her cooking in my kitchen, when she brought a dish she'd wanted him to try. I smiled through it all, each laugh of mine feeling heavier than the last. After everyone left, Daniel came behind me while I washed the dishes. "That went well," he said softly, his breath brushing my ear. I managed. "She's doing better lately," he added. "I'm glad. She deserves some happiness." I turned off the tap. "You seem to care a lot about her happiness." He froze for a heartbeat, then forced a laugh. "She's your best friend, isn't she? I'm just saying." "Right," I said, drying my hands. "Just saying." But the way his voice cracked mid-laugh told me everything I needed to know, even if I wasn't ready to face it yet. Over the next few weeks, my dreams turned anxious. I'd wake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, reaching across the bed only to find the sheets cool on his side. He'd started sleeping in the guest room because of my snoring, though I'd never snored before. Once, I found one of Tasha's earrings, a tiny gold hoop, in the laundry basket. I held it in my palm for a long time, trying to convince myself it must have fallen there when she'd visited. But the basket was in our bedroom. She hadn't been in our bedroom, had she? The thought made my stomach twist. One Thursday evening, I left work early. The school had closed for a staff meeting, and I decided to surprise Daniel with dinner. I stopped by his office with takeout from this favorite Thai place. His secretary looked up, startled. "Oh, Mrs. Miller, Daniel didn't tell me you were coming." "He didn't know," I smiled. "Is he in his office?" Her eyes flickered nervously. He left about half an hour ago." Said he had a personal meeting. Something cold washed over me. Did he say where? She hesitated, then whispered, "The café across from the old bookstore. He goes there a lot lately." My hands tightened around the paper bag. The same café I'd driven by every Thursday. I thanked her, smiled, walked calmly back to my car, and drove straight there. The drive took 7 minutes. 7 minutes that stretched like 7 years. When I parked across the street, I saw them immediately. Daniel and Tasha. Same table, same smiles, same unspoken comfort. This time her hand rested openly over his. He didn't pull away. I sat there for a long time, the food going cold beside me. My breath came slow, deliberate. The betrayal wasn't a scream, it was silence. That kind of silence you can only feel when 2 people you love have chosen each other over you. And that was the night I stopped pretending I didn't know. When I finally decided to confront them, I didn't plan it. It just happened. Like the truth had been sitting in my chest too long and burst through before I could stop it. It was the following Saturday. The air was thick and humid, the kind that makes everything feel heavy. I'd spent the morning pretending to clean, though I hadn't touched a single thing. My mind was stuck on that cafe scene, Tasha's hand over Daniel's, his soft smile, the quiet betrayal that neither of them even tried to hide. By noon, I was trembling. Not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. I couldn't keep carrying the weight of pretending. So when Daniel walked through the door, humming, with a faint smell of vanilla trailing behind him, I spoke before I could think. "Where were you?" He froze mid-step, keys dangling from his fingers. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone careful, almost practiced. "Don't," I said softly. "Please, Daniel, not today." He sighed, dropping the keys on the table. I was meeting a client. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized how easy lying had become for him. "What's her name?" I asked. He blinked, his lips parting slightly. "Her. Don't play dumb. The woman you're seeing." For a second, I thought he'd deny it. Thought he'd raise his voice, get defensive, turn it around like men often do when they're caught. But instead, Daniel just stared at me, silent, expressionless, and then looked away. That silence told me everything, so I said it for him. "It's Tasha, isn't it?" He looked up sharply, his eyes flashing something between shock and guilt. "Who told you that?" My voice cracked. "No one had to. I saw you, at the café, holding her hand." He exhaled, long and slow, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." I laughed. A small, bitter laugh that didn't sound like me. There's a right way for your wife to find out you're sleeping with her best friend. He ran a hand over his face, eyes darting toward the floor. "It's complicated." "No," I said quietly. "It's betrayal. Complicated is when you forget an anniversary. This," I gestured between us, "this is something else." He didn't argue, didn't apologize either. Just sat on the edge of the sofa, shoulders slumped. I wanted him to beg, to fight for what we had, to say it was a mistake, but he didn't. That hurt more than anything else. That night I called Tasha. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and familiar. "Hey girl, what's up?" My throat tightened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Don't act like nothing happened." There was a pause, one long enough for me to hear her breathing shift. "What are you talking about?" she said carefully. "I know about you and Daniel." Another silence. Then faintly, "Oh, just that. Oh," like I'd mentioned the weather. "How long?" I whispered. "A few months," she said finally. "It just happened. We didn't plan it, I swear." "You didn't plan it," I repeated, choking on a bitter laugh. "You planned the dinners, the phone calls, the little secrets right under my nose. You both planned this perfectly." "Please don't be angry," she said softly. "You don't understand. Daniel and I cut her off. "Don't you dare say you love him." But she did. Quietly. "I do." Something inside me broke then. Not cleanly, but in slow, jagged pieces. The next day, they came to see me together. I was sitting at the dining table, staring at a cup of untouched tea when the knock came. When I opened the door, there they were, side by side. Daniel's hand brushed against hers like instinct. I stepped aside, numb, and let them in. Tasha's eyes were red. Daniel looked pale, uneasy. They sat across from me like two students waiting to explain a failing grade. "We wanted to talk," Daniel began. "I bet you do," I said, folding my arms. He glanced at Tasha, who took a deep breath and said, "We didn't mean to hurt you. You know I love you. You're my sister." But things changed between Daniel and me, and sister. I snapped. My voice shook. "Sisters don't sleep with each other's husbands." Her eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't like that. We just connected. You two were growing apart." I slammed my hand on the table. "Don't you dare blame this on my marriage. You were in my house every week, Tasha. You ate my food, laughed with me, hugged me when I cried over that same man you were sleeping with." Daniel muttered, "That's enough, Sarah." "No, Daniel." I turned to him. "You don't get to tell me what's enough. You both took something sacred and turned it into your convenience. He looked down, ashamed, or maybe just tired of pretending. Then Tasha said something I'll never forget. We wanted to come clean because we're getting married. For a moment, I couldn't even process the words. Married. Daniel nodded slowly. We want to start over, honestly. I stared at them, blinking, waiting for the world to make sense again. Then, as if it wasn't enough, Tasha leaned forward and said, We were hoping you could help us out with the honeymoon. I thought I'd misheard. What? You've always been so supportive, she said gently. And we thought, since you still care about us. I laughed then, really laughed. It burst out of me in disbelief. You cheat on me, destroy my marriage, and now you want me to pay for your honeymoon. Daniel's jaw tightened. We didn't mean it like that. Oh, please, I said, standing up. You meant every word. You two deserve each other, and every miserable moment that follows. Tasha's eyes filled again. Sarah, please, don't hate us. We're all family. I felt something settle inside me then. A cold, clear calm. No, I said quietly. We're not family. Not anymore. When they left, I sat in the silence they'd created, the silence that had been building for months. The clock ticked, the tea had gone cold, and my hands trembled only once before going still. That was the moment I decided. I would never let either of them define my peace again. They had taken everything I'd built, but they would not take my dignity. Not now, not ever. After they left that afternoon, I sat there in the stillness of my home, our home, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muffled traffic outside. Everything looked the same, yet everything had changed. The sofa still bore the faint dent where Daniel used to sit. The framed photo of the three of us at my birthday still smiled down from the mantel. Me in the middle, his arm around my shoulder, Tasha leaning close on the other side. 3 faces caught in a lie I hadn't known was forming. I took the frame down, looked at it for a long time, then placed it face down on the table. That evening, I packed a small overnight bag and went to my sister's house across town. I didn't tell her much at first, just that Daniel and I needed space. But my silence told her more than my words ever could. Sarah, she said softly as she handed me a blanket, whatever happened, you don't have to carry it alone. I nodded, though I still couldn't bring myself to say the words. He cheated. With Tasha. Saying it out loud made it too real. But that night, lying in my sister's guest room, I realized something simple and terrifying. If I didn't take control of my life now, they would both rewrite my story for me. And I refused to be the woman who quietly disappeared after betrayal. The next morning, I called a lawyer. His name was Mark Delaney, middle-aged, kind eyes, no-nonsense voice. He listened patiently as I told him what had happened. I want a divorce, I said, and I don't want to drag it out. He nodded. Understood. Any joint assets? The house, some savings, my car. He scribbled notes. We'll make sure it's fair. You deserve that. When I hung up, I felt lighter. Still broken, but lighter. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was freedom. A few days later, I went back home to collect some things. Daniel was there. He looked surprised to see me. You could have called, he said. I didn't think I needed permission to enter my own house, I replied, walking past him. He sighed. Look, I know you're angry. Don't. I turned to face him. You don't get to call it anger. This is grief, Daniel. I'm grieving the life you killed. He had no reply. As I packed my clothes, he hovered near the doorway. We never meant to hurt you, he murmured. Then you shouldn't have. I zipped the bag, turned to him. You told me once I was your home. You lied, but I'll build another one without you. He looked down, guilt written all over him. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, but instead, he said quietly, You'll always be part of me, Sarah. I met his gaze. No, I'm done being a part of you. I'm whole on my own. And with that, I left. The next few weeks were strange, like learning to walk again after years of standing still. I rented a small apartment closer to my work. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, peeling wallpaper, a view of the streetlights instead of the sunset. But it was mine. Every evening I'd come home, make tea, and sit on the balcony, listening to the city breathe. There was something healing in the ordinary, in the smell of my own cooking, the quiet hum of solitude, the absence of his footsteps. Tasha tried calling. I didn't answer. She texted once. I miss you. Please, can we talk? I stared at the message until the words blurred, then deleted it. Some doors don't close. They rot from the hinges, and you walk away before they collapse on you. A month later, Daniel emailed me about the divorce papers. He'd signed them. No fight, no fuss. Just his neat signature at the bottom of a life we once built together. But attached to the email was something unexpected, an invoice. Honeymoon fund request. The subject line made me laugh out loud. Apparently, they were serious about me helping out. He wrote, Tasha and I are planning to travel after the ceremony. She mentioned how generous you've always been. I hope you'll consider contributing as a gesture of goodwill to close this chapter peacefully. I read it twice, waiting for the punchline. It never came. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But then, something inside me stirred. Not anger, but clarity. So I replied, Dear Daniel, I've given you more than enough of my time, money, and trust. This chapter is closing, but not on your terms. I wish you both the life you've chosen, with all the consequences that come with it. Sincerely, Sarah. Then I added a little postscript. P.S. My goodwill doesn't come with a price tag. I hit send, poured myself a cup of tea, and smiled for the first time in months. The day of their wedding came and went quietly. I didn't go, of course, but news travels fast in small towns. People whispered about how odd it all seemed, how quickly they'd moved on, how Tasha's smile looked forced in the photos. A mutual friend sent me one picture out of habit. Daniel in a suit, Tasha in a white dress, her hand looped around his arm. They looked happy, or maybe just desperate to appear that way. I deleted the photo. I didn't need to see what I'd already buried. Instead, I threw myself into work. I stayed late, volunteered at the school's weekend programs, started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. My hands trembled at first, unused to creation after so much destruction. But slowly, colors returned to my world. Soft blues, gentle golds, hopeful greens. I was beginning to remember who I was before them. Then one evening, I ran into Tasha's younger sister at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable, clutching a basket of apples. Hey, Sarah, she said, hesitantly. I heard about everything. I'm so sorry. I smiled politely. It's okay. Life happens. She hesitated, then whispered, They're not doing so well, arguing a lot. Daniel's business is struggling. I paused, studying her expression. She wasn't gossiping. She was pitying them. Some lessons, I said gently, we learn the hard way. And I meant it. Because I'd learned mine too. Never build your happiness on people who need to break you to find theirs. That night, as rain pattered softly against my window, I realized something simple but freeing. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Daniel, not even at Tasha. I had rebuilt something they never could. Peace. A funny thing about secrets is that they always outlive the lies meant to protect them. For months, I stayed quiet. I didn't tell anyone what Daniel and Tasha had done. I didn't post cryptic quotes online or confide in colleagues. I simply let silence do the work. And silence, as it turns out, is a powerful truth teller. By the time autumn came around, people had already begun whispering. Not because of anything I said, but because they couldn't keep their story straight. In small towns, love affairs don't stay private for long. The same neighbors who waved at you while watering their plants are the ones who later lower their voices in grocery aisles when your name comes up. I'd walk through the market and hear fragments. Did you hear who Daniel married? Wasn't she her best friend? No wonder Sarah's been quiet lately. At first, I hated it. The pity in their eyes, the soft tones, the way they looked at me like a breaking thing. But then, something shifted. I realized I didn't need to defend myself, not when the truth had already begun to do it for me. A few weeks later, I attended the town's annual fundraiser, something I'd helped organize for years. I hadn't planned on going, but the school principal insisted. "People miss you," she'd said. "And besides, it's time they see you smile again." So I went. I wore a simple navy dress, pinned my hair up, and forced my nerves into stillness. When I arrived, heads turned, conversations quieted, and for a moment, I felt that old wave of shame creeping up, until I caught my reflection in the window. I looked composed, peaceful even. Let them talk, I thought. Let them see I survived. An hour into the event, they arrived. Daniel and Tasha. He wore his same confident grin, though it didn't reach his eyes. She looked beautiful, as always, but something in her expression had dulled, like a candle burning too long. They hadn't expected me to be there. I saw the flicker of surprise cross both their faces when our eyes met. Tasha hesitated, then approached with that familiar, nervous laugh. "Sarah, it's been ages." I smiled politely. "It has." She glanced around, lowering her voice. "You look good." "So do you," I said. And it was true, though the compliment tasted like dust. Daniel hovered behind her, silent, awkward. His gaze darted toward me, then away. I almost pitied him. Almost. Throughout the evening, whispers followed them like shadows. I didn't need to listen closely. I could read it in people's expressions. A woman leaned over to her husband. "Can you believe she used to be her best friend?" Another murmured, "She really asked Sarah to pay for their honeymoon, you know?" I didn't spread those stories. Someone else must have. Maybe the secretary from his office. Maybe one of Tasha's old friends. Betrayal has a way of leaking out, no matter how tightly you try to seal it. By the end of the night, I realized something profound. I no longer felt humiliated. They did. When the event wrapped up, I was helping pack decorations when Daniel walked over. "Sarah," he began quietly, "can we talk?" I straightened. "We said everything that needed saying. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry." His voice trembled slightly, the first time I'd heard it crack in years. "I ruined everything good I ever had, and I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but—" I raised a hand. "You don't need to finish that. I forgave you, Daniel. Not for you, for me." He blinked, confused. "Then why can't we at least be—" "Because forgiveness doesn't mean access," I said calmly. "It means peace." He swallowed hard, nodded once, and walked away. I didn't look back. A week later, Tasha showed up at my apartment, unannounced. She looked nothing like the radiant woman I'd once known. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, eyes swollen, her voice trembling when she spoke. "I shouldn't be here," she said, but I didn't know where else to go. I stepped aside silently. She stood there for a moment, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "Things haven't been good," she whispered. "Daniel's changed. He's angry all the time. The business is falling apart. I thought we'd be happy, but it's like everything we built was poisoned from the start." I listened quietly. She was waiting for sympathy, maybe absolution. But I didn't have either to give. "Tasha," I said softly, "you can't build peace on someone else's pain. You took something sacred and turned it into survival. Now you're paying the price." She began to cry. I just wanted to be loved. I sighed. We all do. But real love doesn't come from betrayal. It grows from honesty, and you burned that bridge the moment you lied. She covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I handed her a tissue. I know, but sorry doesn't make things whole again. She nodded slowly, then whispered, Do you think I'll ever be forgiven? I thought for a moment. That depends, I said quietly. Can you forgive yourself? She didn't answer. She just nodded weakly and left, her footsteps fading down the hall. When the door closed, I exhaled, not out of anger, but relief. That chapter, at long last, was finished. The months that followed were calm. I focused on my work, my hobbies, and the simple joy of quiet mornings. Sometimes people would still bring up Daniel and Tasha. Apparently, their marriage was unraveling fast. I never asked for details. I didn't need to. Some stories write their own endings. I had already written mine, Peace After the Storm. At the school's year-end ceremony, I stood at the podium giving a speech about resilience. My hands didn't tremble this time. Sometimes, I said to the audience, life tears away the people you thought you couldn't live without. But what it's really doing is showing you who you are without them. And that person, the one who survives, she's stronger than you ever imagined. The room went quiet. I caught a few teachers nodding, a few students smiling softly. And for the first time in a long time, I felt proud. Not of what I'd endured, but of who I'd become because of it. That night, sitting on my balcony, I whispered a small thank you to the universe, not for the pain, but for the lesson. Because sometimes the worst heartbreaks are the ones that finally lead you home to yourself. Healing doesn't come with fanfare. It comes in whispers, in small, steady breaths, and quiet mornings when you realize your chest doesn't ache the same way anymore. For a long time, I thought moving on would mean forgetting. But as months turned into years, I learned that healing isn't about erasing what happened. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that pain tried to take away. After everything with Daniel and Tasha, I sold the house. Not out of bitterness, but because it held too many echoes. The walls remembered things I no longer wanted to relive. The laughter that wasn't real, the promises that turned sour. I bought a small cottage on the edge of town, surrounded by wild lavender and humming bees. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I painted the walls myself, tail cream with soft green trim, and filled the rooms with secondhand furniture and handmade curtains. Each nail I hammered, each stroke of paint, felt like an act of defiance and renewal. I began tending to a little garden in the backyard. The soil was stubborn at first, hard and unyielding, just like me. But with time, patience, and a bit of care, it softened. So did I. There were lonely days, of course. Days when the silence in the house felt too wide, when I'd reach across the table, expecting conversation that wasn't there. But loneliness, I realized, is just a space waiting to be filled, and I began filling mine with things that fed my soul. I started taking early morning walks by the lake. The air smelled of dew and earth, and the sound of ducks gliding across the water reminded me that life still moved, gently, faithfully, no matter how many times it had been shaken. I reconnected with people I'd neglected while I was married. Old friends, my sister, even my mother, who'd always said, "Child, never let your kindness blind you." We'd sit on her porch, sipping tea, talking about everything and nothing. And one afternoon, as the sun dipped low, she said, "You look lighter, Sarah." "I feel lighter," I replied, because for the first time, I truly did. About a year later, I ran into Tasha again, at the grocery store of all places. She was standing in the cereal aisle, staring blankly at a box in her hands. When she saw me, she froze. For a heartbeat, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile. "Hi." "Hi," I said back. She looked thinner, older somehow. There were faint lines around her mouth, and her eyes no longer carried that spark they once did. "How are you?" she asked quietly. "I'm good," I said honestly. "You?" She gave a little shrug, learning the hard way. We stood there for a while, surrounded by boxes of cereal and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Two women bound by a story neither of us would ever fully escape. Finally, she said, "You look happy, Sarah." "I'm glad." I nodded. "I hope you find peace, too." She smiled again, watery this time. "I'm trying." And that was it. No apologies, no rehashing, no bitterness. Just two people, acknowledging the ghosts between them, and then letting them go. When I walked out of that store, I realized something had shifted. I didn't feel anger or sadness, just release. In time, life began to feel gentle again. I started volunteering at a local women's shelter, listening to stories that reminded me I wasn't alone in my pain, that betrayal wears many faces, but healing has the same voice everywhere, quiet, patient, strong. I began writing too, small reflections, bits of advice, lessons I'd learned through the cracks in my heart. People started reading them, sharing them. Some wrote back saying, "Your words helped me leave," or "I feel seen." And that became my purpose, turning my pain into something useful. One spring morning, while planting new seeds in the garden, I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who trusted too easily, the one who loved so hard she forgot to love herself. I smiled, because she wasn't weak, she was simply hopeful. And hope, even when it breaks you, is still something sacred. As I brushed dirt off my hands, I whispered a quiet prayer. Not for Daniel, not for Tasha, but for me. For the version of myself that kept walking when everything else fell apart. Sometimes, at night, I still hear echoes of the past. Laughter fading down the hallway, the click of a door closing. But they don't hurt anymore. They're just memories now. Pieces of a story that no longer defines me. If anything, they remind me how far I've come. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about deciding that it no longer gets to own you. And that, I think, is the most powerful kind of freedom there is. So I live quietly now, tending to my garden, hosting tea with friends, writing words that might reach someone the way I once needed them. My heart isn't perfect, but it's whole. And that's more than enough. That's the strange beauty of betrayal. It breaks you open, but in doing so, it makes room for something stronger to grow. For me, that something was peace. You know, sometimes I sit out on my porch at sunset, watching the sky turn gold over the lavender fields, and I think about how life has a way of humbling us and healing us all at once. I used to believe betrayal was the end of something, that when people you love tear your trust apart, the only thing left is emptiness. But now, I know it's not the end. It's a beginning, a painful, necessary rebirth. When my best friend became my husband's mistress, I thought I'd never laugh again, never trust again, never be again. But I was wrong. I lost them, yes, but I found me. And that, dear listener, is the quiet miracle hidden inside heartbreak. It strips away the noise until all that's left is your own voice, the one that's been waiting all along to be heard. So, if you're sitting there right now, maybe holding the pieces of a life someone else shattered, please don't rush to glue it all back together. Sometimes the cracks are where your light will come through. Let them talk. Let them leave. Let them regret. You just keep growing, keep rising, Keep forgiving yourself for ever thinking you weren't enough. Because one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll wake up, stretch your arms, and realize it doesn't hurt anymore. And that peace, that's your power returning home. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in your heart, take a moment to share it or leave me a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done if your best friend became your husband's mistress and asked you to pay for their honeymoon? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, my darlings, forgiveness isn't weakness. It's wisdom wrapped in grace. Until next time, take care of your heart. It's the only home you'll ever live in.